Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, and today I'm going to be talking about the 2004 action film My Name is Modesty. Modesty Blaze is our main character, a young woman working as a casino croupier in Tangier when a group of violent criminals enter the casino. This gang of hoodlums shoot several of the casino staff and demand entry to the casino's safe. Unfortunately, it turns out that one of the people the crook shot was the only person who could open said safe. Hans Gruber-style criminal geniuses, these guys are not. Probably the crook's best strategy at this point would be to cut their losses and get out of there, but instead they agree to Modesty's proposal. She'll call in a fellow employee who has computer access to open the vault, and in the meantime, she and the leader of the crooks can occupy their time with a little roulette. When Modesty wins, the crooks let one of their hostages go free. When Modesty loses, she has to truthfully recount some of her personal history. Now, of course, there's an inbuilt time limit to this curious détente. Sooner or later, the crooks will either get into the vault or get tired of waiting. Either way, violence is going to break out. The question, of course, is who will be left standing once it does. So this film is based on a long-running British comic strip called Modesty Blaze, about a former crime boss turned secret agent. Written for its entire 40-year lifespan by its creator Peter O'Donnell, the strip was full of pulpy, sexy spy antics. Sometimes too sexy for American newspapers, in fact, which objected to the series' inclusion of occasional nudity. Perhaps in part because of the series' erratic and unreliable syndication in the United States, Modesty Blaze has never got a big screen, big budget adaptation. The closest it came was in 1966 with a British-made pop art style spoof, which is quite at odds with the rather more grounded narrative style of the comic strip. This adaptation was certainly never intended to change the franchise's low cinematic profile. It was in fact made as a pro forma low-budget meeting of contractual obligations project so that Miramax could retain their rights to the source material, rights that they've done nothing with in the nearly 2 decades since then. This kind of just keep the movie rights film project happens from time to time, perhaps most infamously with the 1994 version of Fantastic Four, a film Marvel Comics tried to bury because of their fears it would destroy the credibility of the property. Now, My Name is Modesty is nowhere near as obviously cheap and minimum effort as that 1994 offering, but it's certainly not a very good film, so let's talk about where it goes wrong. So the film goes the origin story route, which is it's a rather obvious and unadventurous approach to take, but I admit it's not automatically a bad decision for a property that lacks deep cultural penetration in the United States. Introduce the character from her first concepts, basically. But while making an origin story isn't automatically a bad idea, framing it as a series of narration-heavy flashbacks is. And that's what the movie does, turning over nearly half the total runtime to the tedious roulette game where Modesty has to answer questions about her past if the bad guy wins, and the bad guy has to let a hostage go if she wins. Modesty's history thus dribbles out and fits and starts over an unnecessarily long time. It's a structural flaw that undermines both the current casino-based crisis and the murky story of Modesty's past. Both become trapped in a somnambulistically slow slouch towards a resolution that often feels far more distant than it actually is, given that the film runs for less than 80 minutes. Now, if you're familiar with the Modesty Blaze franchise, you might be thinking, oh well, at least an origin story will need to address how Modesty came to know Willie Garvin, and that will be cool to see. After all, Garvin is the Ginger Rogers to Blaze's Fred Astaire, the Bogart to her Bacall, the Laurel to her Hardy, the Starsky to her Hutch. He's been an integral part of the comic strip since its inception. He's Modesty's #1 ally, her brother from another mother. He's the first thing that a Modesty Blaze movie must have after Blaze herself, right? Well, yeah, you can probably guess my next statement. There is no Willie Garvin in this movie. And to be as fair as I can to the film, even this isn't automatically a bad decision. Making Modesty a sole operator ensures that she keeps the centre stage in what is, after all, supposed to be her movie. What is automatically a bad decision, however, is the script's failure to generate tension. The principal culprit of this failure is the long roulette game sequence, which, as previously discussed, occupies almost half the movie's runtime. It's a bafflingly dull sequence that fails on multiple levels. A key failing of the scene is that the stakes it sets simply don't matter. Yes, if Modesty wins, a staff member hostage is allowed to go free, but we know nothing about these people and have been given no reason to care about them. Literally one of them has had a line of dialogue. I mean, yes, their survival is nice from the lens of the basic moral assumption that murder is bad, and murder is bad, but there's no actual reason for the crooks to murder them. So Modesty is saving them from a fate they probably won't even suffer. On the flip side, when Modesty loses, she has to tell the head crook a little story about herself. Now, as a mechanism to force in a bunch of expository flashbacks go, well, it is one. Not a very good or interesting one, though, and one of rather shaky motivation. Why does the head crook care so much about Modesty's background? And if he cares so much, why does she not just offer her a deal where if she tells him, he'll let everyone go? And why is there any motivation for us to assume that any of what she tells him is true anyway? Now, the answer to why don't they just do a deal where she tells her story and he lets everyone go is presumably because it'll be more tense if we make it part of a game. But this answer is wrong. There would be more tension if people's freedom was based on a satisfactory quid pro quo instead of mere chance. Is Modesty's story actually good enough to win someone's freedom? That would be an interesting scenario. Will the ball land on black or red? Is not. Even replacing roulette with poker or blackjack would make the scene better. At least those games involve some element of skill as well as luck, and we could see Modesty and the head criminal engaging in bluff and counter-bluff, which would actually be thematic to the whole point, which is that she's setting him up for a fall. But the movie just doesn't do this. It's just bad choices. Bad choices. Now, my own knowledge of Modesty Blaise comes not from the comic strip, which I've only read a very little bit of, but from the novelizations that Peter O'Donnell adapted from his own work. I read a number of those in my mid to late teens, at which time they were pretty much perfectly suited for my reading tastes, offering as they did fast-paced plots leavened with a dash of sex and a lot of sardonic wit. Now, while teenage me probably would have been happy to give up a bit of the wit for a little more of the sex, the key feature of the books was absolutely that they were fun romps that played to O'Donnell's strengths as a writer. Witty dialogue, lots of action, memorable villains. My Name is Modesty simply doesn't offer the same sense of fun, nor does it really seem to try. The action is almost entirely relegated to the end of the film, the villains are forgettable and frankly a bit inept, and, perhaps most baffling of all, given Quentin Tarantino's executive producer credit, the dialogue offers no quotable moments of cool, no memorable exchanges or quips. The film is instead curiously drab and low-key, lacking the verve and style that it really needed to lift it from mediocrity. Conceived to do the bare minimum to keep the rights to the Modesty Blaise franchise, this is a film that delivers only a bare minimum of entertainment and is a bit of a disappointment overall. Next time, Hallmark's 2002 adaptation of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale, The Snow Queen. But that is indeed next time. Until then, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.